Have you ever felt that sudden undeniable spark to just learn something completely new?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like you get so excited, you start searching online, and before you know it, you are just staring at a graveyard of saved articles, dozens of bookmarked videos, and I mean, maybe 3 online courses you bought on sale but haven't even opened?
Yep, the classic digital hoarding.
Exactly. You've consumed hundreds of pieces of content, but let's be real. If someone asked you to actually execute the skill right then and there, you would completely freeze.
Completely.
And, in episode 18, we created this really practical plan for our growth goal. But a plan kind of creates another big question,
It does.
which is, what do I actually need to learn to achieve that goal? So today, for this deep dive, we are going to build your personal learning system. We're looking at the Victory with Ashmaster knowledge base and mapping out exactly how to shift from, passively consuming information to actually developing real-world capabilities.
And I want to say right up front to anyone listening, you aren't failing because you lack intelligence. You're really not. Or drive, for that matter. You're just failing because you are using a consumption system when what you actually need is an application system.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, the framework we are looking at today maps out how to bridge that gap. The gap between just passively absorbing data and actively developing a capability.
Okay, let's unpack this a little bit because, wait, isn't learning supposed to be a purely positive thing?
You would think so, right?
Yeah. I mean, how does reading a book or watching an educational video ever actually become a bad thing?
This raises an important question because it becomes detrimental when gathering knowledge turns into, well, a really sophisticated form of procrastination.
Oh, wow. Sophisticated procrastinated.
Exactly. The source material actually describes this as becoming a professional learner, but remaining an inexperienced practitioner.
A professional learner.
Yeah. And the mechanism behind this is totally rooted in how our brains process reward.
Okay, how so?
Well, when you watch a video on marketing or, read an article about leadership, your brain releases dopamine.
Right, feels good.
It feels highly productive.
Yeah.
You get this emotional reward of having accomplished something, but, and this is the catch, you haven't actually taken any real-world risk. You haven't faced the friction of applying the knowledge.
So it's like having a garage full of the most expensive high-performance car parts in the world?
Yes.
Like you have a supercharged engine, the carbon fiber panels, racing tires. That's your information.
That's all the YouTube videos.
Right. But until you actually bolt those pieces together and turn the key, which is the implementation, you aren't going anywhere. You just have a very expensive, very cluttered garage.
That physical assembly is exactly what's missing for most people.
Yeah.
The fear of starting often drives us right back to the comfort of consuming more information.
Right.
We tell ourselves, I just need to understand the topic a little bit better before I try.
I just need to watch one more video.
Exactly, just one more. But the Victory framework argues that information alone rarely creates transformation. The critical shift is changing your internal question from, what information can I consume today, to what capability do I need to develop?
Capability. That one word completely changes the temperature in the room.
It demands action.
It really does. But to make that shift, the source text insists we have to fundamentally rewire our mindset before we even look at a learning system.
Right.
And they introduce this through 3 concepts, which are rise, reset, and refocus.
Yeah, the underlying psychology here is about establishing a completely new baseline.
Okay.
So rise is the conscious decision to stop accepting a massive gap between your potential and your reality.
Taking responsibility.
Taking total responsibility. But, you can't just decide to rise and suddenly be a brand new person.
Obviously not.
Which is why the reset phase is neurologically crucial. You have these existing habits and limiting beliefs that are just consuming all your cognitive energy.
Right.
If you don't deliberately dismantle those old patterns, any new learning system you try to build will just collapse under the weight of your old routines.
The text has a line that drives that home perfectly. It says, "You cannot build a better future while carrying the habits that created your current problems."
That's a great line.
It is. I mean, going back to the house analogy, rise is the decision to finally fix up the property, right?
Right.
And reset is ripping out the moldy drywall and the bad wiring, the old habits. You have
Oh,
to
yeah.
clear out the debris first.
And clearing the debris allows you to refocus, because attention is a finite resource.
Very finite these days.
Absolutely. Modern digital architecture is explicitly designed to fracture your focus. So refocusing means intentionally directing your cognitive bandwidth toward a singular, meaningful objective.
Because wherever you direct your attention, your behavioral results will naturally follow.
Exactly. Growth is rarely an information problem. It is almost always an implementation problem.
Okay, so with that mental foundation cleared and focused, we move into the actual architecture of this personal learning system.
The blueprint.
Right, the blueprint. And the source provides this overarching logic. It's not just a random list. It goes goal, then identify skill, then select resources, learn, practice, apply, review, improve.
It's a very deliberate sequence.
It really is. Everything starts with defining a highly specific goal and then immediately identifying the exact skill needed to reach it.
Because the goal filters the noise.
How so?
Well, think about it. If your objective is to become a better public speaker, your goal dictates that you shouldn't be reading books on the anatomical structure of the vocal cords.
Right. You don't need a biology lesson.
No, you need to be studying pacing, body language, storytelling. Your learning must be tethered to a real-world outcome, otherwise you are literally just memorizing trivia.
And that leads right into how we handle the sheer volume of information out there. The framework suggests we only need to learn the essentials first. The phrase they use is, learn enough to start, then start to learn more.
I love that phrase.
Me too. They use AI as an example, which I think is incredibly relevant right now.
AI is the perfect stress test for this system.
It really is.
If you decide you want to use AI to become more productive at work, the traditional professional learner approach would have you trying to understand neural networks, large language models, parameter sizes.
Oh my gosh, you'd be overwhelmed in a day.
Exactly. You'd quit. The framework says you should ignore all of that. Just learn the absolute basic concept, figure out how to write one effective prompt, pick one single tool, and find one specific task like sorting your daily emails to apply it to.
Which brings up the concept of curation. The text really emphasizes choosing quality over quantity.
Yes.
Which sounds obvious, but it is deeply counterintuitive when we have search engines returning, millions of results in a fraction of a second.
We suffer from the paradox of choice. When you have 50 highly rated books on a topic, just the cognitive load of deciding which one to read exhausts you before you even turn a single page.
That is so true.
Curation is about intentionally limiting your options. Finding one exceptional resource and committing to it fully is infinitely more effective than skimming 20 mediocre articles.
You're removing the friction of constant decision-making.
Exactly.
And once you have that one resource, you need a way to process it without burning out. The framework suggests building a routine that prioritizes consistency over massive volume.
Right. You don't need a 4-hour marathon study session.
No. They propose something as simple as a 50-minute split. 20 minutes of learning, 20 minutes of practicing, and 10 minutes of reviewing.
And that specific time distribution is actually leveraging the spacing effect in cognitive psychology.
How interesting.
Yeah, cramming information for hours creates an illusion of competence, but the memory decays rapidly.
Like college cramming for finals.
Exactly. By limiting the input to 20 minutes, you avoid that cognitive overload. Yeah. And then the immediate 20 minutes of practice forces your brain to retrieve and apply the information.
Which strengthens the neural pathway.
Yes, and that final 10 minutes of review acts as a consolidation phase. You're identifying where you struggled so you can adjust your next session.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the source material illustrates this practice phase with a story about two people trying to grow a small business.
The person A and person B scenario.
Yes. It perfectly captures this divide between passive consumption and active capability. Let's break it down. Person A realizes they need to improve their marketing.
Right.
Because they lack a focused system, they default to consumption. They watch videos on SEO, they read blogs about copywriting, they listen to podcasts on brand identity, analyze algorithms.
They're doing all the things.
All of it. A month goes by, and they have acquired a vast vocabulary of marketing terms. But their business hasn't generated a single new customer.
Because they haven't implemented a single strategy.
Exactly. They were busy collecting car parts.
Precisely. Now contrast that with person B. Person B also wants to grow their business, but they set a hyper-specific goal. They say, I need to generate qualified leads.
Right.
So they ignore branding.
Yeah.
They ignore SEO. They decide the capability they need right now is direct email outreach.
It's one thing.
They pick one channel. They learn how to write an opening hook for an email.
And then they immediately practice it. They don't wait until they are some expert master copywriter. They draft the email, they send it to 10 prospects, and they look at what happens. The real world becomes their classroom.
What's fascinating here is that this creates a continuous feedback loop.
Yeah.
Person B bridges the gap between learning and doing so tightly that the two happen almost simultaneously.
And they aren't afraid to fail.
Because when you apply knowledge immediately, failure ceases to be an indictment of your intelligence. It simply becomes data.
It's just data.
Person B looks at the open rate of those 10 emails, figures out what didn't work, and uses that real-world data to dictate what they need to learn the next day.
And to capture that data, the framework strongly advises keeping a physical learning record, tracking the date, the topic, what was practiced, the results, and what needs improvement.
Yes.
Because relying on memory is dangerous. Memory is incredibly flawed. When we write down the result of our practice, we are forcing ourselves to be objective about our progress.
A written record also prevents you from falling back into the illusion of productivity.
Oh, that's a good point.
If your learning record for the week shows that you spent 6 hours reading and 0 hours practicing, you can't lie to yourself. The imbalance is staring right at you on the page.
This entire system, setting a goal, filtering the resources, the 20-minute practice blocks, the feedback loops, it is incredibly robust. But the source material makes a crucial pivot right here.
A very important one.
It states that trying to execute the system in total isolation is basically a recipe for failure.
Because human behavior is largely dictated by environment. We are social creatures, and we unconsciously adopt the baseline normal of the people around us.
The baseline normal.
Right. If you are trying to implement a rigorous personal learning system, but you are embedded in an environment where the baseline normal is to complain, to consume mindless entertainment, to avoid taking risks.
The social friction of trying to grow will eventually just wear you down.
Exactly.
The environment sets the standard. If everyone around you is actively learning and applying new skills, suddenly it feels strange if you aren't doing the same.
That is the mechanism behind why the Victory with Ash platform was created.
Okay.
It functions as a manufactured environment designed to elevate that baseline normal.
Got it.
It offers the structured training in areas like personal development, communication, leadership, business. But more importantly, it enforces a social contract.
How so?
Members are expected to uphold specific values: integrity, dependability, teachability, accountability.
And the text details how this structure reflects the background of the founder, Ash Mufareh.
Yes.
He built organizations focused on principles like personal responsibility, faith, family, and service to others. The philosophy seems to be that success, if it's isolated from strong values and supportive relationships, is just hollow.
Absolutely. And a major component of that environment is mentorship.
Mentorship is huge.
Mentorship acts as an accelerator. When you are practicing a new skill and you hit a wall, a mentor can look at your process and immediately identify the flaw.
Saving you weeks of frustration.
Weeks. Because they provide the external perspective that you just cannot see when you are deep in the weeds of your own learning process.
But so what does this all mean for the listener? The text is very clear about personal responsibility here. A platform like Victory with Ash can provide the optimal conditions, the structured learning, the community, the mentors, but it cannot do the push-ups for you.
Right. It provides the soil, the water, and the sunlight, but you must choose to grow the roots.
I like that.
The resources are inert until you engage with them. And the ultimate aim outlined in the text goes far beyond just getting better at a job.
What is it about then?
It's about a fundamental transformation of how you interact with the world. Developing capabilities allows you to become someone who can positively impact your community, your family, and society at large.
So rather than just talking about this framework abstractly, we want to actively model how you apply it today, right now.
Let's do it.
The source material outlines an 8-step application exercise. And instead of just listing the steps, let's actually walk through what this sounds like in practice.
Okay, let's use a highly relatable scenario.
Sure.
Suppose your goal is to transition into a management position at your current company within the next 6 months.
Okay, so that's step 1. Return to a specific goal. Step 2 asks us to identify exactly 3 capabilities needed for that goal. So if I want to be a manager, I'd probably need conflict resolution, project management, and public speaking.
Great. Now, step 3 is where we eliminate the noise.
Yeah.
You look at those 3 capabilities and you select only one to develop first.
I'll choose conflict resolution because honestly, that's the one that currently scares me the most.
It's a tough one.
Step 4 is choosing focused resources. So instead of buying 10 different books on leadership, I'm going to pick one highly rated book specifically on navigating difficult workplace conversations, and maybe one specific internal training module my company offers.
And you ignore everything else.
Totally.
Now, step 5 is creating the routine.
Okay, I will commit to the 50-minute split we discussed 3 days a week. 20 minutes reading a chapter on conflict de-escalation, 20 minutes of practice, and 10 minutes of review.
Step 6 is the most critical part, application. How do you practice conflict resolution immediately, today, without waiting for a massive crisis at work?
For my 20 minutes of practice, I could literally script out a conversation I need to have with a colleague who has been, say, missing deadlines. I write down what they might say, and I apply the de-escalation techniques from the chapter to my written responses.
Yes.
I'm actively generating the capability, not just reading about it.
And step 7 and 8 complete the loop.
The learning record.
Right. You write down that you practiced scripting that conversation, you note how difficult it was to find the right phrasing, and at the end of the week, you review those notes to see where your understanding is still weak.
By walking through it that way, you can really see how the framework prevents you from just wandering aimlessly through information. It forces a very deliberate, purposeful sequence.
This process drives a fundamental identity shift.
Yeah.
The goal is to stop viewing yourself as a receptacle for information.
A receptacle, wow.
I want everyone listening to take a second here. I'm going to ask a few questions, and I want you to really think about your answers.
Listeners, grab a pen if you have one.
What capability do I need most to achieve my current goal?
Take a second.
Am I learning with a purpose, or am I simply consuming information?
Think about that.
What is one resource I should focus on instead of many?
Just one.
How can I practice what I learn immediately?
Today.
And finally, what will my learning routine look like for the next 30 days?
Write those down, really. Because you are stepping away from the identity of, I am someone who consumes information, and you are stepping into the identity of, I am someone who develops capability.
You move from just acquiring facts to embodying a process.
I learn, I practice, I apply, I improve.
It takes learning out of the realm of a passive hobby and turns it into an engine for actual momentum. You do not need to know everything about everything.
No, you don't.
You only need to know what matters for your specific goal right now.
The defining metric of your growth is not the number of podcasts you've listened to.
Right.
It's not the articles you've saved or the books sitting on your shelf. As the source material states so perfectly, you must measure your growth by what you can now do that you couldn't do before.
That is the whole point. And if you are looking for an environment that enforces that kind of active development and, surrounds you with people pursuing that same baseline normal, the source text actually includes a direct way to access their community.
Yes, it does. You can find it at victorywithdash.com.referred code JG87CS4TJY. It's a really fascinating model for turning these psychological principles into a shared social structure. Remember the mantra: rise, reset, refocus.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want you to think about that digital graveyard of content you've collected. Think about the sheer volume of hours spent acquiring facts without applying them.
It's a lot of hours.
It is. I want to leave you with one final thought to examine your own routines.
Okay.
If every hour you spent passively consuming information over the last 30 days had instead been spent relentlessly practicing just one single skill, who would you be today?